Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Although David likes to humbly call it David and Jill Live, but David Burns Live, Rapid Recovery in Real Time. And David and I will be teaching and practicing and learning and connecting with you guys.
I want to thank you, Michelle, and say hello. Now, I don't think we can hear you, so we may need to get you unmuted, or you may need to unmute yourself.
There you go.
Okay. Hi, David. Hi, Jill.
Hi,
Hi, Michelle.
I'm really touched that you've joined us, and I've been looking forward to this tremendously. When my book, Feeling Good, came out in Australia around 1989, I had the chance to go there for 10 days and do some promotion for the book. But I had a lot of time on my hands and got to know many of the people in Australia, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. So people were so warm, so caring. It was a fantastic experience. So maybe I can kind of help repay that debt and give you something, Jill and I, something beautiful in return. Tell us kind of how you're doing right now, and then we can review your brief mood survey and empathize and get started.
Well, I'm just looking at my brief mood survey. It's probably still more or less accurate. I did it about an hour or so ago now. My anxious, nervous tension has probably gone up a little since then. Yeah, I'm pretty nervous, but it is exactly why I'm here. So I just feel like I'm throwing myself to the wolves.
Sure. Your topic, just to give people a little preview, is this presentation and the social anxiety that goes along with that, and kind of super anxious about doing personal work in front of the group. And on the brief mood survey here, which is like kind of we'll do at the beginning and end of the session, your depression score was 6 out of 20. It's only a mild level of depression, but certainly enough to take a lot of the joy out of life. You're somewhat on many symptoms like sad and down and moderately discouraged, and kind of a loss of pleasure and satisfaction in life, loss of motivation, no suicidal urges. The anxiety is the high one, was 15 out of 20, which is severe, and it's probably right at this moment even higher. The anger is 5. We'll find out about that if you're angry with yourself or with someone else. That's a mild level of anger, but it's still very, very significant. And one of the reasons to use the brief mood survey is because therapists are very poor at actually knowing how patients feel. We have these impressions that we know how someone's feeling, but if you test therapist accuracy in any dimension, it's usually less than 10%. And the dimension therapists have the greatest trouble with is anger. The therapist's ability to perceive anger in patients is 0% accurate. The happiness is 13 out of 20, and we'd love to see that up closer to 20. It's not incredibly unhappy, but there's not tremendous joy there either, and that reflects the depression score of 6 out of 20. That's robbing you of real joy and happiness. And the goal of the work that Jill and I do is not just a reduction of negative feelings, but the generation of feelings of joy, if possible, because that's what people want. Your relationship with let's see who this is. Best friend is 30 out of 30. That's perfect. And then your feelings, just to finish the testing, and then we'll go on to empathy. On the daily mood log that you filled out, which you folks can see in your handout, you're 40% unhappy. This reflects pretty much the same thing we just saw. 80 out of 100 on the anxiety. It's probably 90 or higher at this very moment. And then you feel inferior, inadequate, and incompetent, 75% out of 100. And you feel embarrassed, foolish, and self-conscious, 80, 70% discouraged, 60% frustrated and stuck, and 60% annoyed and irritated. So let's dive into it, and I'll turn it over to you, Jill.
Okay, Michelle. Well, it's nice to meet you, and yeah, I feel grateful that you're gonna be on this journey with us today. David, kind of went over the testing part, but I'd really love to just hear from you in an open-ended way. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about what you've been struggling with and what you're looking for help with today.
Yeah, sure. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity, terrified but grateful. And I think looking at those scores on the daily mood log, some of them right now would be much higher. They were relatively high when I did that because I was just thinking about doing this. And now that I'm here, yeah, they're higher.
Let's just quickly re-estimate them. Just what would you say the feeling down is?
That can stay at 40, but 40. I put the anxious at 100.
Okay. And then the inferior and inadequate?
The inferior cluster can go up to 90.
Okay.
The embarrassed cluster at 100.
Discouraged?
70, that they can stay. I'm terrified. I've just realised how much I'm shaking and yeah. So I think the rest of them can stay. Discouraged at 70, frustrated. Okay, let's put that at 80. And annoyed is 60, I think is fine.
Thank you. Back to you, Jill.
And
yeah, go ahead.
I think the reason I volunteered was because I think a lot about what you talk about, David, in terms of the fractal, the moment in time. And this feels like a moment in time which is so incredibly reflective of many moments in time. I feel like it has impacted my career. And it's held me back from doing things that I think I should just be able to do. And so, like when I look at this brief mood survey and the 6 for depression and the 13 for happiness, I feel like those are those scores right now because the anxiety is elevated. When I manage to kind of put my blinkers on and push the anxiety away, they're much better. The depression is lower and the happiness is much higher. So I kind of feel like I definitely travel through life really, really well. But when it comes to something like this, it just terrifies me. And I was thinking, actually looking back on, I did the introduction to team training late last year, and looking at a daily mood log that I filled in there, and actually it was very, very similar to this, about what was coming up for me when I just think about doing a group presentation. I feel I'm not in my stomach. I start crying. And yeah, it's quite uncomfortable.
Okay. So yeah, Michelle, let me see if I'm kind of getting you right, and if I can kind of further understand what it is you've been struggling with. You started out by telling us that you feel terrified, but grateful for this opportunity. And I can see that it's really scary for you. And at the same time that you feel really excited to try to tackle and conquer this fear that you've had for a really, really long time. And you're telling us that also, which makes a ton of sense to me, that whole fractal idea that like this is one moment in time, and speaking with us and being a part of the live demonstration today is obviously scary and terrifying for you, but it reflects this idea of kind of social anxiety or performance anxiety, I think you're saying. And I'd love to hear more about that too, like in what ways that's coming up for you in your life. But I did hear you say, giving presentations is really, really scary, maybe being the center of attention. And you kind of said you feel like in general, like life is good, there's like a lot of positives. And when your anxiety is not high, you feel really good. And the depression is not there. And the positive feelings is really, really strong. But at the same time, this anxiety is significant enough that it causes, real problems for you, where you feel really, really anxious. And then that impacts how you feel about yourself. And you have more of these feelings of depression and self-consciousness. Am I kind of getting you right so far?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's much more in a professional capacity than it is in a personal capacity.
Okay.
It's probably always been a little bit of social anxiety in a personal capacity, but it hasn't bothered me as much as in a professional capacity. And so I can recall moments in university where you say you have to do a presentation on something, and I would feel very anxious prior to something like that. I mean, I also recognize that it did push me, because I would kind of stick a hand in the middle of my back and say, go first, Michelle, like get it over and done with. And so I've always sort of tried to work through it or face it or ignore it. But I think as I've gone through my career, it's probably just hindered me from putting myself forward for jobs where I might have to be more senior or do a presentation, in a work sense. And even just looking at, say, at a colleague who's more senior than I, and even doing a little speech, like we'll have a lunch for a staff member who's leaving. And so my senior colleague will do a speech and say, thank you, Sarah, for the work that you've done for us. And even something like that, I would feel incredibly nervous to do that. Yeah. And so I've felt like I've hidden a lot.
Yeah, hidden a lot. I want to say that I feel really close to you and sad that you've struggled like that. I'm wondering too if you've even been feeling tearful when you've been shaky here in the last 10 minutes or so.
Like now?
Yeah.
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 And if those tears want to come, just let them come. I can think about my first academic presentation was at Oxford University, and I fantasized it would be horrible. I had to give this talk at a conference. I fantasized it. I couldn't sleep the night before in the most horrible way, and it came out exactly the way I thought. And it was just a horrible experience for me. So I'm really with you on that, and it'll be a joy to bring you through to the other side. I do public speaking all the time now, and I really love it. But there was a day for me too when it was hell, or worse than than hell. And I can't thank you enough for the courage and generosity you've had to be with us today. It's you've really touched me, and as I say, I'm just so proud of you.
Thanks,
Although I know
David.
it's awful for you right now.
It is awful. And I can feel the whole physiological response, going on, and the sweat and the dry mouth, and yeah.
Yeah, and Michelle, you were saying it's presentations like this, where well, this is probably as intense as it gets, being in front of hundreds of colleagues. But you said it impacts you in smaller ways too, but really significant ways. So if you're at a, lunch or something and someone it's sort of like you need to make an impromptu speech or even a planned speech, but maybe more casual than a big professional presentation, just being the center of attention and having to speak in front of people causes you really a lot of anxiety. It sounds like kind of dread and feel all of those physical sensations. So I could see it would have impacted you in university and then kind of professionally and maybe not applying for as challenging jobs or leadership roles, but even personally, right? At a friend's birthday or a birthday lunch, it could impact you.
Yeah. And I think it's probably even stopped me from doing supervision of students, psych students. I just haven't felt like I've had the confidence to do that. And I think you're right. I've felt really uncomfortable at the thought of impromptu anything. And if it's something which isn't impromptu, I can push myself to do it with a lot of preparation, with a lot of work. And there's probably not much stepping outside of what I've prepared.
Mm, right.
No.
Sort of over preparing, making sure you have it all figured out, and then not feeling free to make things up on the spot or be more spontaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, and I love what you're doing, Jill, by the way. And it's kind of what we were talking about during the empathy phase. I to just be paraphrasing what you're saying, Jillian.
Michelle.
Yeah, what do you think? Tell me what this is like for you at this very moment, and what do you think people in the audience, there's over 300 of them, approaching 400, I think, might be thinking about you right now, or what might David and Jill, too, be thinking about you? Do you have the idea that people might be having negative or critical thoughts about you?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of those I put down on the daily mood log, and I actually added a couple more just prior to the workshop. I was sort of had this strange idea that I might get some sleep before the workshop because it was 12:30, middle of the night for me, but I did not sleep. And so I'm thinking that people will wonder how I've got my qualifications. People will think I'm stupid.
Okay, let me write that down. How did she get her qualifications?
Yep.
And then she's probably stupid. She sounds
Yep.
stupid. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
She's stupid. Great. Those are good. What are some more?
Well, I think it's the stuff that's on here.
Yeah, I'll read your daily mood log negative thoughts. When I've finished the list, we'll add some more to it. But number one, this is ridiculous. It's not even a problem. And then 100% belief in that. Number two, this won't be helpful to anyone. 100%. You're just taking up valuable time. 100%. Others' problems are way more important. 100. People will think you're selfish and self-occupied. 100. they'll realize I don't know what I'm doing, 100, and number 7, and in fact, I don't know what I'm doing, 100. And then you said you had a couple more, and I'll jot them down.
And so the last two were, they'll wonder how I got my qualification, 100.
Yeah.
And they'll think I'm stupid, and I gave myself 99, like a little 1% gift.
Yeah. They'll think I'm stupid. Now, I also have another question for you. 99. Thank you for that. And then, are David and Jill thinking this also?
Yes.
Right. And so then, what are the feelings that you're having about David and Jill right now?
I don't know. I guess I just feel distant.
Mm-hmm. You're saying I feel distant. I Michelle feel distant, or they seem distant, or all of the above?
All of the above. Yeah, all of the above.
And then if David and Jill are having these thoughts about you, critical, judgmental thought, what does that tell us about the kind of people that they are?
That they are critical and judgmental. And even if that's coming out of my mouth, I know that's not true.
Right. But it's really interesting, though, and in a way that you're saying I Michelle am no good, and you, David and Jill, are no good either. Do you see what I mean? Like it's kind of this nightmare world, and then what feeling might you have toward people who are critical and judgmental and lacking in warmth and support? Like, one feeling we know is this incredible anxiety, but what's another feeling?
Well, I guess another feeling could be irritability.
Yeah.
Irritable. Yeah.
And you indicated quite a bit of anger, and we were wondering about that. Are you kind of feeling a little angry at the world? I was wondering if you were angry at yourself or angry at others, and it sounds like you might definitely have some anger toward us.
But it feels more like when I was filling that in, it feels more like the irritability and annoyance is more at myself. Like, why can't I just get over this?
Yeah. So can I add that as another thought, number 10? I should be able to get over this.
Yeah.
That could be thought number 10, to get over it. And that's, what's the belief in that one?
100.
100. And then can we add another one, number 11? David and Jill and the rest of them are critical and judgmental.
Yep.
Critical and judgmental. And then what's the belief in that one when it passes through your mind and when you're feeling irritable?
Look, I think only 40.
Oh, only 40, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I was just thinking maybe we could take a minute to just sort of empathize with Michelle and connect with you around that. So on the one hand, just so the audience understands too, on the one hand, it almost looks like David's doing a method here because he's got the daily mood log out kind of already. And on the other hand, we actually really think about this as still kind of part of empathy, because we're not actually trying to change, right? We're not actually trying to work with Michelle. We don't even know if Michelle wants help with this yet, but we're collecting data. We're trying to understand Michelle. And the daily mood log, though, it again kind of looks like a method. It's not a method until we get to distortions and positive thoughts. Right now, it's just a container to sort of organize what Michelle is sharing with us. And Michelle, you've shared a lot of feelings, right, by kind of circling them at the top of the daily mood log. And so we're also getting a sense of what are some of the negative thoughts that are coming up for you. And since you filled this out before, it's helpful to get some of the present negative thoughts too, right? And so I just wanted to connect with you, Michelle, and say, I really feel for you. Like, I can imagine how kind of painful it is to be sitting here and thinking that others are judging you, that David and I are judging you, that that people are going to look down on you and think that you're stupid, and that even having this problem at all is stupid. Again, it takes, a lot of bravery to be putting yourself out there. And I know that this is really challenging, and that really you're feeling very emotional right now.
Yeah. And actually, it was really lovely, just the email that you sent me before the group, Jill and David, to say, could you send us through the brief mood survey? Sort of, we want to check in. We're a bit worried about, we're expecting you could be a bit nervous, and Jill, for you to write back and say that you were feeling a bit nervous as well. That felt really nice. And I think another thing that's coming up for me in the moment is just this sense that when I am nervous and I kind of just want to shut down and withdraw and not be myself, and not wanting that to just kind of completely ruin the whole point of me being here.
So you feel kind of afraid. You notice the pattern, which totally makes sense to me too. When you feel nervous, you want to just withdraw, avoid, right? Shut down. And yet you're pushing really hard to be present, to share yourself with us, because you know that if you were to withdraw and shut down and kind of not be with your feelings, that might be a problem, or that would sort of be counterproductive. But I can totally imagine the tension that you feel, the pull between like sort of wanting to just take care of yourself by shutting down and going inward and being like, I could just run away, versus wanting to actually do the work, right? And be here present and work through this with us. And I could totally imagine that struggle being really hard.
Yeah.
I'm wondering too, Michelle, if you're I suspect there's a part of you that really would like to feel cared about right now and supported and accepted. And I'm wondering if you're also might be feeling some loneliness and some yearning.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'll add that lonely to the daily mood log. How lonely do you sometimes feel now?
Probably 80.
80. And I'm wondering if there's a part of you that is just wanting to cry and wanting to let go, but maybe a little afraid to trust also.
Oh, I'm doing a bit of crying. I guess I feel I have this image of both me like being on a stage, kind of isolated on a stage with lots of people looking at me, and so that's that feeling of feeling a bit alone. I mean, I do feel like you guys are on the stage with me, so it's not 100% alone. But I am crying.
I was wondering, could we? It's never premature to do this sort of what's my grade technique, and I would love to check in with you, Michelle, and just ask you, how do you feel like David and I are doing in terms of empathizing with you and understanding you, what grade would you give us at this point? That's like an A, a B, a C, or a D.
Yeah, I think I give you an A. Yeah, a B. I feel like, I suppose I feel like there's a lot I'm holding back, but at the same time, I don't know what I'm holding back. And I don't, yeah, so I know when I ask my clients, what grade would you give me? And they give me a B, and I say, fantastic, you know, what am I missing? And so that question is going through my head, what are they missing? And I'm not sure how to answer that. But it feels like a B plus.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said about what you ask your patients. You're right. That's kind of exactly what we'd love to try and understand too. It's so important to check in with you. And it sounds like there is something that we're missing, or that you feel like you haven't quite shared yet.
So maybe it's just this, the sensation is huge in my body. And I was listening to the Feeling Good podcast just over the last couple of days, and I was listening to the recent live therapy with Elizabeth, and at the start of that, when David, you're talking with Rhonda, and you always do a bit of an introduction about the upcoming training, and so you introduced this session and spoke about it, and I felt my stomach just go into knots. And I think the way you described it was, this is going to be like, what did you say? Like a high wire act without a net underneath.
Yeah, right.
What the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, tell us, Michelle, I think you caught something so important. Tell us about what it feels like in your body, because I know exactly what you mean. Like, we can talk about anxiety and use words to describe it, but when you feel it in your body, it can be really horrific. So let us connect with you and understand what's happening in your body. Tell us what it feels like.
I can feel myself holding my fingers, my hands really tight. I can feel kind of some pressure in my throat, and I feel a knot in my stomach. And I can hear, as I'm talking, my voice really, really wavering. And I can feel the tears running down my face. So yeah, it's really, there's a lot of stuff going on there, and I find it useful in many regards, because I am so aware of it, that when a client is talking to me about anxiety, that I can sort of pinpoint that stuff and say, are you feeling this? Are you feeling that? But at the moment, it feels like the volume on that is really turned up.
And you're right, because we're not sitting with you in person. David's asked about tears. I can see that you've been having tears the whole time and wiping your face with a tissue. And so perhaps some of that alone, we would be sitting on that stage beside you, like within arm's reach. And so I can imagine it is even harder, and maybe you don't feel like we can see kind of how stressed your body is, and really how hard this is for you right now in this moment, heart racing and tension and pressure and upset stomach, and just how tremendously stressful this is for you.
Yeah, and you're holding your hands tight. You've got pressure in your throat, a knot in your stomach, shaky, tears going down my face. The volume is turned up physically to a tremendous level. And when you listen to that podcast, you thought, and you're probably thinking right now, what the hell am I doing? Is that right?
Yeah. And I think maybe something as well that is contributing to just that feeling of feeling a bit alone or a bit lonely or distant was more that sense, because it feels like I'm here in Australia and I'm on a very different time zone, and you're all over there in the US or, on the other side of the world. So it's also that sense of feeling that distance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's physical distance and emotional distance too. And that I'm not feeling close to David and Jill and people, and that's the kind of the central issue. And how could they possibly accept me too? Is that what you're thinking? How could they care about me? And I'm this wreck, this emotional. I'm just all fearful, and this is bad and wrong. Something in that range.
Yeah. And I think I feel that distance as well. If I sort of visualize myself, say, standing at a podium or something and needing to do a presentation to people at a seminar or a conference, it just feels like there's this gaping divide between me here and other people out there, and the spotlights are on, and the volume's turned up.
This might be a waste of time, but how might you want to be feeling right now with David and Jill in this group?
I think sort of emotionally held. Yeah. And it's funny because there's a part of me that wants to feel emotionally held, but there's another part of me that is sort of pushing it away almost, because I think I don't want to just, what's the term? I don't just want cheerleading, because cheerleading is not going to make this go away. And there's been times in my career, my work, when I know that I have felt really anxious about a decision that has had to be made, and I've struggled to manage that anxiety myself, and it's felt like it's been managed through others' cheerleading, and then I just sort of come away from it thinking, well, it's kind of nice, but I should be able to do this myself.
Yeah. So again, there's that pull toward, it would be really nice to feel maybe in this moment even more support from David and I in the form of cheerleading. That sounds kind of tempting, right? Sure, maybe that would help you to feel better in the short term, for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Like us doing some cheerleading, I could be a really good cheerleader, but at the same time, you have this awareness that if we went in that direction, that really doesn't solve the problem. And you're saying even you've had that experience with others. I totally know what you mean, where you're feeling down about yourself and then a friend or a family member kind of pumps you up, and that really helps in the short term, but then you're still left going but I need to be able to do this for myself. I need to be able to feel to stand on my own 2 feet and to be able to do this for myself.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think the other thing, I think you're spot on, but I think the other thing is that I think there's times when everyone else is tired of the cheerleading as well. And, oh, for God's sake, Michelle, just do it yourself. And I think that because I know my mum is highly anxious, and I have felt that over the years, that I've done a lot of work to try and help mum be less anxious, and to kind of give her some confidence or to boost her. And I get frustrated by that after a while, and I just want her to do that work, and I don't want that. I don't want to be that. I want to be able to do it on my own and stand on my own 2 feet and be independent and confident and strong, and yeah.
So that's one way that you kind of push away, the warmth. But I'm wondering too. This is just speculative and probably way off base. But is there a part of you that pushes away for fear, maybe of being disappointed, or not believing that the warmth and the love and the being held and the compassion are real or genuine? Like, how could it be genuine since I'm so screwed up, or something like that? Or
I'm not sure if it's because I'm so screwed up. I think there's definitely something in there about how can this be true or genuine, but I think it may be stronger that I think I should be able to do it myself.
And I added that on your list of negative thoughts. That's number 12. I should be able to do this for myself.
But it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on the other hand, I saw that as Michelle's goal actually for today, which is she's saying, like, I want to overcome my anxiety. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. I don't want you guys to engage in cheerleading. Like, I want you to help me to help myself. Like, I kind of heard that in a very powerful way, very clearly, Michelle, like, my goal. I'm tired. I don't want to deplete others by looking for cheerleading. I'm tired of leaning on others to make me feel better about myself. I want to learn how to do it myself. Was I getting you right, Michelle? That's almost like that's what you're wanting to get out of the session.
Yep. Yeah.
Is that true? Yeah. On the other hand, of course, if it's said in the form of a should statement, I shouldn't ask for help, or I shouldn't need others at all, then I could imagine that could be sort of a distorted thought. Maybe I just confused you, Michelle.
I think you just confused me.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
But at any rate, I think that what you're saying is that you yearn for closeness, but you have a way of kind of pushing it away, because you're telling yourself, I shouldn't need that warmth and support. I should be able to do this on myself. I should be strong. I shouldn't have these flaws and weaknesses. I shouldn't have this social anxiety. Is that?
Yeah.
Let me ask you now how we're doing. Again, what's our grade on empathy?
I'll give you an A now.
Okay, and why did we get an A?
I think sitting with how it is right now, how strong it is right now was really important. It feels like understanding that the physiological stuff is almost so loud that it's hard to see some of these thoughts. So I think that has really helped. And also pulling out that understanding that this really feels like a double-edged sword, that it's this, I don't know, push-pull between wanting support but thinking I should be able to do this on my own, and a massive part of me wanting to be able to do this on my own, or at least to be better able to, I don't know, pick the moments when I can do it on my own. It feels more like I've expressed that better now, and that you've got that.
I appreciate that. I just want you to know I feel so close to you. You probably maybe pushing that away too, but I just see just how what a beautiful person you are, and yet how much suffering you've had at a super intense level. And then from a humble teaching point, since we're both trying to treat and teach simultaneously, is that the grade, the what's my grade, we could not have connected with you without that technique. And it was fairly simple to get from a B to an A, which is what have we missed? And then you said it was the physical part. And then it was a simple matter to ask about that and to paraphrase it. Someone from our Tuesday group went on a Sunday hike, an older fellow who had been coming for years to the Tuesday group, and he confided on the hike that he too had intense social anxiety. And we were just starting the hike. It was one of these Sunday hikes with my group, and I was trying to show off my empathy skills, and the students were watching me kind of do live work with this wonderful guy. And then I said, how am I doing? And he's on empathy, A, B, or C. And he said, oh, I'll give you a B. And my heart kind of sunk. I thought, oh, God, I hate this in front of my students. I wanted to get an A. And then I said, what part am I missing? And he said, oh, the physical part. And I've got all of these sensations going on. It's overwhelming me right now. And he described them. And then I paraphrased them. And I said, now what's my grade? He says, oh, now you got an A. But he said, I'm so ashamed of my anxiety, my shyness. I'm a mental health professional. I'm a PhD, and I'm just so ashamed of this. So I said, I give you an assignment on the hike. Every time we come to somebody, I want you to walk up to them and say, could I talk to you for a minute? Because I've been shy all of my life, and I've been hiding it because I'm ashamed. And I've decided not to hide it anymore. So that's why I'm telling you. And he said, oh, no, do I have to do that? I said, yeah, you have to do that. This is not negotiable. So he started telling people, and he got surprisingly great reactions from them. And then he told this fellow from India who said, oh, my gosh, I've had the same thing. I've been hiding it, too. And they started talking like long-lost friends. And then the fellow from India said, can I join you on the hike? So he joined us on this 3-hour Sunday hike. But I'm talking too much. But at any rate, it was a similar thing. And I'm sometimes afraid to ask for my grade. I'm probably more timid than Jill is, because it can be hurtful when you find out you're not doing really well. It kind of hurts. That's the death of the therapist's ego. So it's not just using a technique like that, but it's having the courage to use it. And if you do, I mean, this is scary for you, Michelle. It's also scary for us, and it can certainly bring you so much closer to your patients. That was my point.
So Michelle, what I would love to ask you, given that you're feeling more like, we're in the A range and that we have connected and understood so much better about that struggle within you. I'm wondering, I'm going to offer you an invitation now. So I'm wondering, would now be a good time for us to kind of shift gears and start to work on the social anxiety or performance anxiety, what you've started to tell us about? Or do you feel like you need some more time for us to listen and offer support and connect and empathize with you?
I feel like I might need just a little bit more time. I'm wondering if something David has said, if maybe I should share something that I'm quite I feel ashamed of, which I think is a childhood experience, which I think is probably where this sense comes from of I should be able to do all this myself. Yeah. When I wet the bed until I was in year 9 at school, and my parents took me to a hypnotist at some point and took me to see a doctor at one point, but I think they just thought I would grow out of it. And I just really remember that because it would happen every night, I had some pretty negative internal dialogue going on. And I'd get up in the morning and I'd take the sheets off my bed and I'd take them out to the laundry. I was living in Darwin. It was tropical. Our laundry was outside. So I'd take them outside to the laundry and I'd wash my sheets. And I remember this same sort of sense, this body sense of just kind of trying to gather myself together and push myself. You should be able to, get over this. You should be able to do this. And so I think that's where this pattern has started. And I think it's, like you're saying, David, this sense of push. The push is really strong. And I think even maybe me giving you an A felt like a bit of a mask if I hadn't have just said what I said.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now, having just revealed that?
About the same. A bit relieved. Yeah, a bit relieved. But I think perhaps it helps to paint the broader picture, and I think it felt a bit like honouring myself and what I've hoped to achieve by sending this daily mood log in and by doing some exposure therapy, that if I hadn't really shared that, it would have felt like a massive shadow.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like this
There was just a message in the chat. I don't know if you saw it. I'm kind of reluctant to read it. Did you see it, Jill?
No, it probably just went to you, David.
Oh, just to me. I don't. Just somebody wrote. Do you want to hear what it was? Just somebody wrote. I'm feeling such love for you right now. Just let those tears flow now.
Thank you.
What you're doing right now is so beautiful. You've had so much suffering.
I love that you were able to realize, that there was this piece that you were still kind of holding back. And I think, you're wanting to connect with us and wanting to feel like we really understand you, and realizing that there's this part of you that you've kept hidden because of shame and embarrassment. And yet it sounds like it is connected, because there's this similar feeling of intense anxiety and feeling like you should be better than you are, or you shouldn't have this problem.
The messages come and flash so fast. I don't know if I can get this one back. I'll try it with my mouse. Let's see. Maybe Mike has it. I'm not. Oh, here's the chat. I see. Yeah. Me too. I feel love for you, Michelle. This is from Layla. I feel love for you, and thank you for sharing difficult and frustrating experiences of shame and sadness.
David, if you're, there's lots and lots of messages coming in for Michelle, and I guess I want to ask, is now the time for us to do that, or not? And I don't mean that actually in a harsh way. I really mean that therapeutically, because I feel like there's so many incredible people who are saying incredible things about Michelle. Maggie actually has them all sending them to her, so we could even unmute Maggie and she could read all the beautiful stuff. But then I worry a little bit that would be cheerleading. There's a time and a place actually for that. It would be called the survey technique. We could in fact for sure ask everyone how they're feeling about you, Michelle. But then I worry a little bit that we'd be doing the very thing Michelle is asking us not to do, which is turn the cheerleading over, to the audience, instead of having Michelle do the work herself. What do you think, David?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's so tempting.
Telling one of my students that once.
I think I remember you telling me that one. See, I'm trying to course correct.
Yeah.
But it's an important point for everyone to hear that, like, I mean, I feel incredible admiration and love for Michelle. And yet I'm wanting to connect with her and support her and create a safe space for her. But I also have this belief that Michelle is a total powerhouse and that she can do the work herself, and again, if she turns to the audience and does a survey technique at some point and asks a question like, what are you all thinking of me, or do you judge me? That will be amazing. And I would love to do that. But I feel like there's so much other work I'd love to do to get Michelle there herself, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. How are you feeling now?
Look, I'm definitely feeling some relief at having shared the personal, and it almost feels like I don't want the cheerleading from the professional side, but perhaps the sharing of those thoughts after I mentioned the childhood stuff that felt really nice, because that was helpful.
Has some of that disappeared?
Yeah. I'm still terrified, but I feel closer.
Sure. Yeah. I love your smile now, too. Thank you. Did the bedwetting ever stop? Sounds like a stupid question. What?
Yeah.
I was hoping Michelle would laugh and realize that it was a bit of a joke.
Now, there's another thing that I'll mention in passing, but not much, because this is for a whole other workshop. But when I work with people, when Jill and I work with people, there's always a lot of laughter. And that can be empathic, because it brings us together on another level. I've never learned how to teach laughter, but it also, I think, has a very healing component. I don't have much to say about it, because I can't think of anything to say about it except that it
fun when it happens.
It happens, and I think it's rarely talked about in therapy.
Well, I think actually it's basically I think it's kind of a cognitive technique, because, when we can laugh at ourselves, we're not taking ourselves so seriously, right? And so it helps, when David says things that are sort of over the top, you realize, kind of how distorted.
Well, I didn't know that was over the top.
Sort of seems absurd, and then we can sort of realize that some of the things we tell ourselves about ourselves and about others are kind of absurd too, right?
Yeah. Now,
anyway,
let's go back to the question. Now, would this be a time that we might
now we're returning
to
the invitation again,
and do some work, or do you want to talk some more, because that was huge what you just did?
Well, I think I'm ready to do some work.
Jill will now take over again on the assessment and resistance. Thank you, but bringing that.
No pressure.
That was magic. Thank you.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.